In the final moments before Steve Jobs' death, his last words, according to his sister Mona Simpson, were "oh wow," as if he were seeing something beyond the veil of physical existence. But what exactly did he see? And more importantly, where does our consciousness go when the heart stops beating? For centuries, mystics, philosophers, and scientists have pondered one of the deepest questions of human existence. What happens to our essence between one incarnation and another? Tibet calls it Bardo. The Egyptians called it Duat. The Greeks called it Hades. But all point to the same unsettling truth. Death is not the end. It is merely a transition. Ian Stevenson, psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, documented more than 3,000 cases of children who reported detailed memories of past lives, including information they could never have known. Jim Tucker, his successor, continues this groundbreaking research, discovering that approximately 70% of these cases involve traumatic deaths, as if trauma were a kind of anchor that keeps certain memories intact during the passage. Today we will dive into the mysteries of the intermediate period, this forgotten dimension where the soul rests, plans, and prepares to return. Get ready to discover truths that can completely change your perspective on life, death, and the purpose of your existence. The moment of death is like a butterfly emerging from the cocoon, a process of radical transformation that modern science has only begun to partially understand. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, conducted a study with 344 patients who suffered cardiac arrest. Surprisingly, 18% reported extremely vivid near-death experiences, including encounters with beings of light and panoramic reviews of their lives. But what ancient texts reveal about this crucial moment goes beyond any modern scientific explanation. While science observes vital signs, electrical impulses in the brain, or chemical changes in the body, the Bardo Thodol dives into what lies behind these manifestations. It addresses the journey of consciousness, describing not only biological death, but the invisible transition that escapes measuring instruments. For Tibetan masters, death is not a final point, but the opening of a passage into other states of being. The first of these states is the Bardo of the moment of death. This is when consciousness experiences the dissolution of sensory perceptions and finds itself before a luminous clarity, a kind of primordial light. Many cannot recognize it, confused by memories, attachments, and fears they still carry. In the second state, called the Bardo of ultimate reality, consciousness is exposed to intense visions, peaceful and wrathful deities, symbolic representations of the mind itself. It is a direct confrontation with the essence of reality, without filters. Finally, the third state, the Bardo of becoming, is the one in which consciousness, having not achieved liberation, prepares for a new existence. At this point, karmic forces come into play, leading the soul toward another incarnation. Thus, Tibetan texts describe in rich detail a process that, for the Western mind, is almost impossible to comprehend. More than a guide for the dead, the Bardo Thodol is a spiritual map of transition, revealing a mystery that science has not even begun to scratch. Rudolf Steiner, founder of anthroposophy, explained that in the first 3 days after death, consciousness remains partially linked to the etheric body, reliving the entire recently ended existence in reverse chronological order. It is like watching the movie of one's life being rewound, but this time with the expanded perspective of the disembodied soul. What is fascinating is that different traditions describe similar phenomena. The Egyptians spoke of the soul's journey through the 12 hours of night in the Duat, facing challenges and transformations. The Egyptian Book of the Dead details how the soul must navigate portals guarded by deities, answering questions about its earthly actions. Paramahansa Yogananda, in his classic work, Autobiography of a Yogi, shares one of the most intriguing passages about life after death. A dialogue with his master, Sri Yukteswar, which occurred after the latter's physical passing. The account breaks the boundaries of what we understand as real, and invites the reader to consider that consciousness does not end with the extinction of the body, but continues its journey on subtler planes. According to Yukteswar, upon freeing itself from the limitations imposed by matter, consciousness undergoes immeasurable expansion. Perception becomes broader, more vivid, and free of sensory filters, as if the human mind were just a small window into an infinite horizon. It is like leaving a dark room for an open field illuminated by the sun. In this state, there are no restrictions of space or time, and reality presents itself in much deeper layers than what the physical senses can grasp. However, this freedom does not mean the absence of responsibility. Yukteswar explained that even in this expanded state, consciousness must integrate all the experiences lived during incarnation. Every choice, every emotion, and every accumulated lesson becomes part of an assimilation process, as if the soul had to organize and understand the teachings of its earthly existence before moving on. In this way, death, far from being an end, is a point of continuity, where expansion and integration balance themselves on the evolutionary path of the spirit. Neuroscience offers intriguing clues about this process. Studies by Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who experienced a near-death event during a deep coma, suggest that when the cerebral cortex is completely inactive, consciousness does not disappear. It expands into dimensions that our physical mind cannot process. The Zohar, a fundamental text of Kabbalah, teaches that at the moment of transition, the soul faces what is called the judgment of the heart. It is not an external judgment, but an intimate confrontation with all the choices made during earthly existence. It is as if every action, thought, and intention were weighed on an internal cosmic scale. This first phase of the post-mortem journey determines the immediate destiny of consciousness. Some souls, completely identified with earthly patterns, may remain trapped in intermediate states, unable to move on. Others, who developed spiritual discernment during life, naturally navigate toward higher dimensions of experience. Between the moment of death and the next birth, there exists an entire universe of experiences that esoteric traditions have mapped in extraordinary detail. We are not speaking of speculation, but of knowledge transmitted by masters, who, through specific practices, were able to consciously access these states while still incarnated. Allan Kardec, in the classic The Spirit's Book, presented to the world a revolutionary vision of existence after death. Through carefully recorded mediumistic communications, he revealed that the so-called astral plane is not a chaotic or undefined space, but an ordered universe, governed by its own laws as precise as the physical laws we know. This invisible structure organizes itself into different levels of consciousness and vibration, reflecting the moral and spiritual state of each soul. Thus, the beyond ceases to be only a mystery and becomes a field of study and understanding. According to these communications, there are organized spiritual colonies that function as true cities of light. In these places, newly disincarnated souls are welcomed, go through processes of energetic and emotional healing, and are gradually helped to free themselves from material attachments. The astral plane, therefore, is not a sudden rupture with earthly life, but a continuity on another level of existence, where each spirit finds the environment most compatible with its inner condition. These colonies do not resemble paradises of eternal rest. On the contrary, Kardec reports that they are spaces of intense spiritual activity, where work is a fundamental part of the evolutionary process. Spirits dedicate themselves to learning new truths, to mutual assistance, and to preparing for future incarnations. Many participate in tasks of instruction, in caring for newcomers, and even in missions connected to the physical world, demonstrating that life beyond is dynamic and deeply interconnected with our material reality. The great teaching left by Kardec is that the spiritual plane is, above all, a school of self-knowledge and reparation. There, the soul faces the fruits of its own choices and finds the opportunity to correct mistakes, strengthen virtues, and prepare for new challenges on the journey of reincarnation. Far from being a final destination, these colonies represent only one stage on the infinite path of the evolution of the spirit, reminding us that every gesture and thought in life directly shapes the experience we will have after death. Swedenborgianism, based on the visions of Emanuel Swedenborg, describes the spiritual world as an objective reality divided into multiple spheres corresponding to different levels of moral and spiritual development. Swedenborg claimed to have visited these dimensions during altered states of consciousness, documenting entire societies of souls that lived specific experiences based on their essential natures. The Egyptian hermetic tradition spoke of the Fields of Iaru, a paradisiacal region where justified souls experience states of bliss while assimilating the lessons of the life just completed. But even in this elevated dimension, there is purpose and continuous progression. Gurdjieff, the Armenian mystic, taught about the existence of cosmic factories, where different types of energy are transformed and redistributed. According to his cosmology, disincarnated souls actively participate in these processes of energetic transformation, contributing to the greater cosmic economy. The most fascinating aspect of these intermediate domains is their responsive nature to the inner states of consciousness. H.P. Blavatsky, in The Secret Doctrine, explained that Kamaloka, the astral region where souls remain after death, functions as a mirror that perfectly reflects the psychic contents of the individual. A soul tormented by guilt will experience infernal scenarios, while a peaceful consciousness will experience harmonious environments. Contemporary research on near-death experiences corroborates aspects of these traditional descriptions. Kenneth Ring, a psychologist at the University of Connecticut, identified consistent patterns in the reports. Most describe encounters with luminous beings radiating unconditional love, life reviews showing the consequences of every action, and environments that respond instantly to thoughts and feelings.
Obviously, many people know about the light, they know about the out-of-body experience, but the thing that really is, I think, important about the near-death experience, and in regard to the life review phenomenon, is it isn't just a life review.
The Urantia book offers a unique perspective on these dimensions, describing mansion worlds, where souls continue their spiritual education through carefully planned experiences. Each level corresponds to different aspects of the development of consciousness, from overcoming emotional limitations to expanding cosmic understanding. But there is a crucial element that is rarely discussed: the role of will during these intermediate experiences. Carlos Castaneda, recording the teachings of the Nagual Don Juan, described how consciousness, freed from the physical body, must learn to navigate realities governed by laws completely different from the physical ones. Pure intention becomes the vehicle of movement and transformation. Maurice Nicole, disciple of Gurdjieff, explained that the post-death period is fundamentally a process of digestion. The soul must assimilate and transform all lived experiences into usable wisdom. It is as if each life were a spiritual meal requiring specific time and energy to be fully processed. The concept of karma is often simplified as a cosmic accounting of good and bad actions, but the reality is infinitely more sophisticated. During the intermediate period, the soul not only faces the consequences of its past choices, but also actively participates in the planning of its next earthly existence. Max Heindel, founder of the Rosicrucian Fellowship, described in detail what he called the period of purification. According to his clairvoyant visions, the soul goes through a systematic process of review where every action, thought, and feeling is analyzed not from the perspective of conventional morality, but in terms of their consequences for the growth of consciousness. The Vedic system offers the most elaborate understanding of this mechanism. The Puranas describe how Chitragupta, the cosmic scribe, keeps detailed records of every impulse of the soul through multiple existences. But it is not an external record. It is consciousness itself that carries impressions, samskaras, of everything it has experienced. Yogananda explained that during the post-death period, these impressions organize themselves into patterns that will determine the circumstances of the next incarnation. It is as if the soul were a cosmic computer, processing accumulated data and generating specific programs for future learning experiences. Kabbalah offers a unique perspective through the concept of tikkun olam, the repair of the world. Each soul carries specific sparks of divine light that must be refined through earthly experiences. During the intermediate period, the soul identifies which aspects still need to be worked on and chooses circumstances that will provide ideal opportunities for that refinement. In his monumental work, Reincarnation and Biology, a contribution to the etiology of birthmarks and birth defects, psychiatrist Ian Stevenson documented hundreds of cases suggesting a link between birthmarks or congenital defects and injuries suffered by people in previous lives. In one of the volumes of his collection, Cases of the Reincarnation Type, Volume 3, 12 Cases in Lebanon and Turkey, 1980, he details precisely a case that occurred in Turkey. In that specific case, Stevenson reports a Turkish child who was born with physical marks or deformities, which, according to the child's own early age testimony, corresponded exactly to the fatal injuries suffered by an individual in a previous life. Although the exact name of the child and of the deceased individual were not widely disclosed in the available summaries, the details are described as coinciding with impressive precision in terms of the location and nature of the wounds. Even more impressive was the verification process. The family of the previous life was contacted and confirmed all the details reported by the child, including events that took place after the death of the person mentioned. The level of precision was so high that it included information that would normally be beyond the reach of mere imagined memory. The deepest aspect of this karmic architecture is revealed by the teachings of Alice Bailey, channeled from Djwal Khul. According to this source, the soul is not a victim of karma, but its architect. During the intermediate period, it actively participates in the choice of parents, circumstances of birth, major challenges, and even the approximate moment of the next death. Rudolf Steiner described how groups of souls often reincarnated together, assuming different roles in order to work through specific issues. A father in one life may become a son in the next. An enemy may choose to be born as a brother to transform hostility into understanding. The Tibetan tradition reveals fascinating technical aspects of this process. The Bardo Thodol explains how consciousness, during the intermediate state, experiences visions of couples in sexual union, symbolic representations of opportunities for rebirth. The soul is drawn to situations that correspond to its unresolved karmic patterns. But there is an even deeper dimension, the conscious choice of specific missions. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, revealed through thousands of psychic readings how certain souls choose challenging incarnations to contribute to the collective development of humanity. It is not punishment, but voluntary service. Dr. Michael Newton, through thousands of sessions of regressive hypnosis, mapped what he called life between lives. His patients described encounters with councils of elevated beings who assisted them in choosing specific lessons for the next incarnation. The process involved careful analysis of progress made, identification of patterns that needed transformation, and selection of ideal opportunities for growth. The most revolutionary element of this understanding is that suffering is not arbitrary. Every challenge faced in physical life was carefully chosen by the soul itself as an opportunity to transcend specific limitations. Depression may be a choice to develop compassion, poverty to overcome material attachments, illness to awaken spiritual values. The process of returning to physical existence is perhaps the most mysterious aspect of the soul's journey. It is not simply a matter of entering a new body, but a complex operation involving the coordination of multiple subtle bodies and the gradual activation of consciousness through different levels of manifestation. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes with surgical precision the final moments of the bardo of becoming. The soul, having gone through all processes of review and planning, is irresistibly drawn to the womb of the chosen parents. But this attraction is not merely emotional. It is a magnetic force based on specific energetic correspondences. Steiner revealed that the process of incarnation happens in stages distributed over approximately 21 years. During gestation, only the etheric body connects to the fetus. The astral body integrates gradually until the age of 7, when the milk teeth fall out, a sign that individual etheric vitality has fully taken control of physical development. The higher ego only fully manifests around the age of 21. The Vedic tradition offers even more specific details. The Garuda Purana explains that consciousness enters the embryo in the 5th month of gestation, when the fetus develops sensitivity and the first formations of karmic impressions begin. Texts such as the Garbha Upanishad describe how the soul experiences intrauterine development with full awareness, remembering past lives and making resolutions for the coming existence. Dr. Stanislav Grof, through decades of research on altered states of consciousness, documented extraordinarily detailed prenatal memories. Patients in holotropic breathwork sessions reported intrauterine experiences, including physical sensations, the mother's emotional states, and even external events during pregnancy. Some described the exact moment of conception as an explosion of light and consciousness. The most fascinating aspect is described by the hermetic tradition. During the incarnation process, the soul goes through a kind of sacred forgetting. It is not a loss of memory, but a temporary concealment necessary so that the earthly personality can develop without being overwhelmed by the knowledge of previous existences. Plotinus, the great Neoplatonic philosopher, explained this process through the metaphor of the fall. The soul does not fall as punishment, but out of love. It descends voluntarily into the lower levels of manifestation to bring light to the densest regions of creation. It is a conscious sacrifice motivated by cosmic compassion. Lurianic Kabbalah offers a unique perspective through the concept of tzaddik nistar, hidden souls who incarnate specifically to elevate planetary vibration. During the intermediate period, these consciousnesses take specific vows of service, often choosing seemingly ordinary lives, but strategically positioned to influence collective awakening. Edgar Cayce revealed that certain souls wait for decades or even centuries in the astral plane, awaiting ideal conditions to fulfill specific missions. He described how the souls of inventors, artists, and spiritual leaders coordinate their incarnations to coincide with critical moments in human evolution. Dr. Newton discovered through his research that the process of choosing a new life often involves groups of souls working together. Spiritual families gather in the intermediate plane to plan coordinated incarnations, assuming different roles to create specific dynamics of mutual learning. But the deepest element is revealed by Tibetan masters. Some souls develop the ability to maintain continuous awareness throughout the entire process of death, the intermediate period, and rebirth. These tulkus, or reincarnated lamas, represent a level of spiritual mastery where death becomes simply a change of clothing for consciousness. The trauma of physical birth, described in detail by Otto Rank and later by Graf, represents the final shock of consciousness as it densifies once again into matter. It is like a star compressing into a planet. The vastness of the intermediate experience must be condensed into the limitations of a physical nervous system. The final result of this extraordinary process is what we call human life, a precious opportunity for the soul to continue its evolutionary journey through direct experience in the densest dimension of creation, carrying within itself, even if hidden, all the wisdom accumulated in countless journeys through the mysteries of existence. The journey we have just undertaken reveals a truth that completely transforms our understanding of existence. We are not human beings having occasional spiritual experiences, but eternal consciousnesses navigating through multiple dimensions of reality, using physical experience as a school for the refinement of the soul. The period between lives is not a passive interval, but the most active part of our cosmic education. It is where we process, plan, and consciously prepare for the next chapters of our evolution. Each earthly life is like an intensive semester in a cosmic university, and the intermediate period is where we enroll for the next courses. The practical implications of this understanding are revolutionary. If we are co-authors of our life circumstances, then every challenge faced carries seeds of growth that our own soul has planted. Suffering ceases to be arbitrary and becomes a disguised teacher, offering exactly the lessons we need for our evolution. This does not diminish the seriousness of human challenges or suggest passive acceptance of suffering. On the contrary, it reveals that we have active responsibility in our journey, both in the creation and in the resolution of our patterns of experience. We are simultaneously students and teachers, victims and heroes, seekers and that which is sought. Death, from this perspective, becomes not the terrifying end our culture fears, but a graduation, a transition to more advanced levels of existence and understanding. And the current life, a treasure too precious to be wasted on trivialities, but too sacred to be lived without joy. The true enigma of the soul is not what happens between one life and another, but how we can live this present existence with the awareness that we are eternal beings, having a profoundly meaningful temporary experience. Perhaps the most important question is not where we go after death, but how we can awaken now to the magnitude of what we truly are. If you have made it this far, it is because something within you recognizes that there is much more beyond the veil of apparent reality. The truths we shared today about the soul's journey are only the surface of a much deeper ocean, a system of universal laws that govern not only life and death, but every movement of consciousness through the dimensions of existence. If you want to understand how to consciously influence your journey through these dimensions, if you are ready to have the keys that open all the doors of the Temple of Mysteries, then the Master Key was written especially for you. This book is a unique synthesis that shows exactly how these principles interconnect and how you can apply them to accelerate your own spiritual evolution. But I must be honest, this knowledge is not for everyone. It is for those who are genuinely prepared to take full responsibility for their reality and actively work with the forces that govern the universe. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Some doors, once opened, completely transform who you are. The question is, are you ready to discover who you can truly become? And if this video has awakened something within you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We have many more mysteries to uncover together on this journey of awakening. Thank you for watching.